I was 5,000 miles away, sitting on the private balcony of my cruise stateroom, watching the dark, moonlit waves of the Mediterranean slide past. It was 3:17 a.m., my time. I couldn't sleep. I was for the first time in years truly, completely relaxed. Then my secure satellite phone, the one I keep for emergencies, buzzed on the small table. Not a text. A priority alert from my apartment's smart home system. Forced entry alarm triggered. Lobby. My heart didn't panic, it went cold. So she's finally making her move. A second later the phone rang. A dedicated encrypted line. It was Mike, my head of security back home. Mrs. Hayes. His voice was low, professional, exactly as I'd trained him. We have a situation. It's 3:18 a.m. here. The lobby alarm just triggered. I have them on camera. It's your daughter-in-law, Amani, and your son David. I looked out at the dark, peaceful water. Go on, Mike. They have a locksmith with them, ma'am. Imani is in the lobby with me right now. She's irate. She has a document. It looks like a power of attorney. She's claiming you had a severe medical emergency, a stroke, and that she's the new owner of the apartment. Effective immediately, she's demanding access. A stroke? How very thorough of her. I took a sip of the lukewarm water on my nightstand. I looked at my own reflection in the dark glass of the balcony door, healthy, calm, and very, very far away. I smiled. A small, cold, precise smile. The smile of a forensic accountant who just found the hidden ledger. Let them in, Mike, I said quietly. Mom? He sounded confused. For the first time, let them in? She has a forged POA and a locksmith. I know, Mike, let them in, use your master key, be polite, be deferential, apologize for the alarm, tell her you just need to verify the paperwork with the building's legal team, but in the meantime she is of course free to enter. Make sure they walk all the way into the main living room, make sure David is with her, past the main archway, and once they are both inside, call me back. Understood, Mrs. Hayes. He hung up. I waited, my heart beating a slow, steady, cold rhythm. They were in. The trap was set. Imani thought she was staging a 3 a.m. takeover of a frail old woman's assets. She had no idea. She was about to get a surprise. A very big, very loud, very steel-plated surprise. Let me tell you how I, a 67-year-old retired forensic accountant, set a trap for my own greedy, arrogant, and spectacularly foolish family. First, let me tell you who I really am, because my son David and his vulture of a wife, Amani, clearly had no idea. To them, I am Genevieve, Jen Hayes, Mom. The quiet, gentle, slightly frail widow. I'm the woman who spent her life as, what? A bookkeeper, or something equally vague and unimpressive in their minds. I retired, my husband passed, and now I live alone in a penthouse apartment that is, as Amani constantly reminded me, frankly too large for one person. They see my simple classic clothes, my quiet evenings with a book, my lack of interest in their flashy high-speed world, and they mistake simplicity for senility. They see a modest pension and assume poverty. They see kindness and assume weakness. They made a fatal, amateur mistake. They never bothered to run the numbers on me. My name is Dr. Genevieve Hayes, and I wasn't a bookkeeper, I was a forensic accountant. For 40 years I was the person high-powered corporations and government agencies called when billions of dollars went missing, when a CEO was cooking the books, when a complex fraud scheme threatened to topple an entire company. My job wasn't just to find the money, it was to find the lie, to trace the digital footprints, unwind the shell corporations, and follow the scent of greed, until it led me to the man. It was almost always a man who thought he was smarter than everyone else. I am not frail, I am meticulous, I am not naive, I am observant, and I am not by any stretch of the imagination poor. My late husband and I, both professionals, were meticulous planners. My portfolio, built over a lifetime of finding other people's hidden money, is substantial, secure, and most importantly private. My penthouse isn't just a home, it's a fortress, a smart fortress, as I call it, designed by security experts. I met after the Alvarez embezzlement case taught me that desperate wealthy criminals can be unpredictable. I live well, but I live quietly. I value privacy above all. My son David, a good man but weak, a man who has always been easily impressed, mistook my privacy for frailty, and his wife, well, she mistook my quiet for stupidity. Let me be perfectly clear, My job for 4 decades was not just accounting. That word is an insult. It's like calling a surgeon a butcher. I was a forensic accountant, a bloodhound. When a $500 million development project in Dubai suddenly had a $50 million consulting fee to an anonymous shell corporation in the Cayman Islands, I was the one they flew in to find out who owned that corporation. When a tech billionaire's charitable foundation was bleeding money into a series of non-profits that didn't seem to exist, I was the one who spent 6 months in a windowless room, tracing the digital transfers back to his ex-wife's new boyfriend's cousin. My entire life was dedicated to finding the lie, to understanding that money is just a story, and my job was to find out who was the author and what parts of the story were fiction. I am trained to see patterns in chaos. I am trained to recognize the subtle telltale signs of greed, desperation and fraud. I have sat across tables from some of the most powerful, arrogant and sociopathic white-collar criminals in the world, smiled politely, and then systematically dismantled their empires, piece by fraudulent piece. This is who I am. This is the skill set I possess. So, when my daughter-in-law Amani started her campaign, did they really think I wouldn't notice? Did they think I, a woman who could smell a fake ledger from a mile away, wouldn't recognize a cheap domestic con job when it was playing out in my own living room? They mistook my retirement for incompetence, my grief for senility, my maternal politeness for weakness. It was a fatal error in judgment. My late husband, God rest his soul, was a brilliant architect, but he trusted everyone. I was the one who managed our finances. I built our portfolio quietly, meticulously, diversifying, shielding, protecting. My penthouse, the one Amani coveted, wasn't just a display of wealth. It was my ultimate safe deposit box, the physical asset I had designed with the same paranoid precision I used to build a fraud case. I retired from my job, not from my mind, and my mind was telling me with screaming, flashing, red alert certainty that my daughter-in-law was a common thief in expensive shoes. I first met Amani 5 years ago, when David brought her home for dinner. My son, my dear, gentle, hopelessly weak David. He works as a university administrator, a respectable job, a stable job but not a powerful one. He's a man who thrives in the quiet, predictable world of academia. And then he brought home Amani. She was a different species, a high-end, high-grossing, utterly ruthless luxury real estate broker. She walked into my quiet, elegant apartment, not like a guest but like a competitor, her eyes instantly, reflexively assessing everything, not for its beauty, but for its value. "What a spectacular view, Genevieve," she'd purred, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my living room, looking out over the city skyline. "The comps in this building must be astronomical. You're sitting on a gold mine. Who says that at a first meeting? Who calls their future mother-in-law's home a gold mine? A vulture, that's who." She was all flash, all noise, all brand names. Her clothes were loud, her jewelry was enormous, her ambition radiated off her like cheap perfume. She worshipped money, but not the quiet, earned, compounding kind. She worshipped the image of money, the fast commission, the quick flip, the high status, high visibility trappings of wealth. She married David, I suspect, not because she loved him, but because she saw him as a stable, respectable and easily manageable +1. A way to launder her aggressive new money ambition with the patina of his, and by extension my perceived old money stability. From the moment they were married, her focus, her obsession became me and my assets. Specifically my penthouse. It was, in her real estate broker's eyes, a wasted asset. A whale of a commission just sitting there occupied by a frail old woman who didn't deserve it. She would constantly make comments, framed as helpful advice about how I should downsize. "Jin, this place is just too much for you," she'd say, her voice dripping with false concern. "All this space to clean, the condo fees. You should sell it. Cash out. You could move into a lovely, simple little condo, something more manageable. And you'd have millions in the bank to just enjoy. To travel. We could help you find the perfect place." I knew exactly what she meant. We could help me sell it, meaning she would take the massive commission, and we, meaning she and David, could help me manage the millions in the bank. I saw the con clear as day, and I always politely, firmly, declined. "I'm perfectly happy here, Amani dear. It's my home." My refusal, my quiet insistence on my own autonomy, infuriated her. It was the one deal she couldn't close, the one asset she couldn't get her perfectly manicured claws into, And her frustration, her greed began to curdle into something much uglier, a calculated, sinister plan. When her polite, helpful suggestions about downsizing failed, Imani shifted her tactics. She launched a quiet, insidious psychological campaign. A campaign I, as a fraud examiner, recognized instantly. She was attempting to build a case, a false ledger, documenting my incompetence. She was trying to gaslight me and, more importantly, to gaslight David into believing I was losing my mind. It started with small, subtle, deniable things. It started with my keys. I always put my keys in the small, antique silver bowl by the front door. Always. For 20 years. One morning they were gone. I searched the apartment in a quiet panic. An hour later I found them. "Jane, silly, what are these doing in the refrigerator?" she trilled, holding them up as David walked in. "You must be so tired. You're putting your keys in the fridge." I had done no such thing, but David looked at me with a new faint flicker of worry. Then it was my mail. I'm meticulous about my finances. I pay my bills the day they arrive. Suddenly a past due notice for my electricity bill appeared on the kitchen counter. "Mom, this came," David said, his voice tight with concern. "It's a final notice. Are you sure you're keeping up with things?" I knew I had paid that bill. I had the electronic receipt, but Imani, who often brought in the mail, had clearly hidden the original, waiting for the late notice to arrive, to create proof of my failing memory. She escalated. She'd remind me of conversations we never had. "Mom, don't forget, we're having dinner at 8 tonight, she'd call as she left for work. When I'd be in my pajamas reading at 8 p.m., she and David would return, expressing deep, performative disappointment. "Mom, we waited at the restaurant for an hour. You forgot again. I told you this morning." David, caught in the middle, would just look at me with that awful, pitying, worried expression. "It's okay, Mom. We all get forgetful. Let's get you a calendar." She was building a narrative, a false file. Genevieve is forgetful. Genevieve is frail. Genevieve is putting her keys in the fridge. Genevieve is forgetting to pay her bills. Genevieve is missing appointments. She was painting a picture for David and for anyone else who would listen, of a woman who was no longer competent to manage her own life. A woman who desperately needed her loving, responsible son and daughter-in-law to step in and help. And the help she had in mind, of course, was a legal one. She began to drop hints about a power of attorney. "You know, Jen," she'd say, her voice full of sweet, reasonable concern, "we really should get all your legal ducks in a row, just in case. A POA, a healthcare directive. It's just so we can help you with the bills, with the decisions, if you ever get overwhelmed, just to take the burden off you." The trap was being set. She wasn't just a vulture anymore, she was a spider, patiently weaving a web of lies, and I was the fly she was determined to catch. I'm a forensic accountant. When I suspect fraud, I don't get angry. I don't get emotional. I get quiet. I open a file. I start a new ledger, and I run the numbers. While I played the part of the increasingly forgetful, frail old woman, nodding vaguely at Imani's helpful suggestions, my mind was working with the cold, sharp precision of a scalpel. She was building a case against me. It was time for me to build a real one against her. I retreated to my home office, my secure fortress, and I did what I do best. I dug. I wasn't just an old woman. I was a retired professional with a very specific, very useful set of skills, and a network of contacts that ran deep. I made a few quiet, discreet calls. I accessed databases she didn't even know existed. I pulled credit reports. I ran asset searches. I followed the digital breadcrumbs of her flashy, over-leveraged life. And the story that emerged was even more desperate than I had imagined. Imani wasn't just ambitious, she was drowning. Her high-grossing real estate career was a facade. She was a top broker in the same way a casino is a successful business. The house always wins, but the players, the ones chasing the high, almost always go broke. She had been churning properties, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, taking out high-interest, predatory bridge loans to cover the closing costs on flips that were failing to sell in a cooling market. The leased cars, the designer wardrobe, the constant performative dinners at $500 a plate restaurants. It was all funded by debt. She was leveraged to the hilt, her credit score in the toilet, her professional license likely in jeopardy if her financial instability ever came to light. She wasn't just greedy, she was desperate. She didn't just want my penthouse as a future commission, she needed it. She needed a massive, immediate score to save her from financial ruin. from the complete and utter collapse of the house of cards she had built her entire identity upon. This new data point changed everything. This wasn't a long-term inheritance grab anymore. This was a short-term, desperate and therefore far more dangerous plot. She wouldn't just wait for me to fade. She would actively accelerate the process. The gaslighting, the campaign to prove my incompetence, wasn't just about setting the stage for a future POA. It was about building the justification for an immediate one, perhaps even a fraudulent one, claiming I was a danger to myself. I realized I wasn't just in a battle for my assets. I was in a battle for my autonomy. And a forensic accountant, when faced with an imminent, credible threat to their core assets, doesn't just get defensive. They build a firewall. They create a trap. They initiate a controlled demolition. It was time to open my own, very private, very secure Amani file. And the first entry was a call to my lawyer. The campaign of gaslighting, of manufactured forgetfulness, had one clear, undeniable goal: to get me to sign a power of attorney, to hand Imani the legal keys to my kingdom. She believed that with that single document she could access my accounts, manage my assets, and most crucially, liquidate my penthouse to simplify my life, and in the process, solve all her own desperate financial problems. She was operating under a fatal assumption that I, Genevieve Hayes, a woman who had spent 40 years untangling the most complex corporate fraud cases in the country, would be foolish enough to keep my single most valuable asset in my own, vulnerable personal name. It was time to let her walk into the first, invisible and most devastating part of my trap. The legal one. I called Arthur Fincher, my estate lawyer, the same man who had helped me set up my initial simple will after my husband's death. Arthur is a man of few words, sharp as a tack, and enjoys a complex legal maneuver more than he enjoys breathing. "Arthur," I said, my voice calm, "it's Genevieve Hayes. I need to activate the Nightingale contingency we discussed last year." "Nightingale?" he repeated, his voice instantly sharp, alert. We had created this protocol after a particularly nasty case I'd consulted on, involving the financial abuse of an elderly client by her son. "Understood, Genevieve. The threat is active. The threat is active and it is escalating," I confirmed. "My daughter-in-law is making a clear, concerted play for a fraudulent power of attorney, based on a manufactured narrative of my cognitive decline." "Vultures," he spat. "Very well, I'll prepare the documents immediately." The Nightingale contingency was a beautiful piece of legal architecture. It was a preemptive strike, designed to render any future POA or forged deed utterly, completely worthless. 2 days later I was in Arthur's quiet, wood-paneled office. We didn't just update my will, we executed a complete, immediate and ironclad transfer of my single most valuable asset, the penthouse apartment itself. It was no longer Penthouse 12A, owned by Genevieve Hayes. It was now Unit 12A, a core asset of the GH Irrevocable Family Trust, a legal entity I had just created. This was the genius of Arthur's plan. An irrevocable trust is a legal fortress. It's a separate entity. I, Genevieve Hayes, no longer owned my apartment. The trust owned my apartment, and I was merely the lifetime beneficiary, with the right to live in it untouchably until my death, at which point the asset would pass outside of probate, directly to its designated heir, in my case, a charitable foundation for retired forensic specialists. This was the legal checkmate. Imani could come at me with any document she wanted. A forged deed, worthless. The name on the deed has changed. A power of attorney, even if she somehow tricked me into signing it, utterly, laughably useless. A POA gives her power over my personal assets, my bank accounts, but the penthouse was no longer my personal asset. It belonged to the trust. And she had no power, no authority, no standing whatsoever to touch, sell, or even look at an asset belonging to the GH Irrevocable Trust. The transfer was filed electronically with the city registrar's office that same afternoon. It was a quiet, digital, public record change that she, in her arrogance, would never think to check. She was so focused on the woman she had forgotten to check the paperwork. A rookie mistake, a fatal one. The legal trap was set, baited and waiting. Now, I just needed to work on the physical one. The legal trap is good, it's clean, it wins in court, eventually. But it's slow, and it wouldn't stop Imani from trying something messier. My work had exposed me to the dark side of white-collar crime. I knew that desperate, as I had assessed Imani to be, was a synonym for dangerous. What if her gaslighting campaign failed? What if I refused to sign her POA? Would she give up, or would she escalate? Would she try to stage a medical emergency? An accidental fall? Would she hire someone to break in to steal the real documents, to frighten me out? After the Alvarez embezzlement case in '09 where the defrauded CEO tried to hire a thug to silence me before I could testify, I stopped being merely cautious. I became in my own quiet way paranoid, and my penthouse, my fortress, reflected that. I called Mike. Mike wasn't just the security guard in the lobby, as Eileen and David dismissively saw him. Mike was the head of building security, a position I had personally created and lobbied the board for. He was ex-military, special forces, and had run private security details in the Middle East. He was quiet, professional, and fiercely, almost terrifyingly, loyal. I paid a significant portion of his salary myself in the form of a private retainer for on-call security consulting. He knew my situation, he knew my concerns about Imani, he was my man on the inside. Mike, I said, meeting him for coffee in a discreet, out-of-the-way cafe, it's time. I'm activating the containment protocol for my unit. I need a full quiet systems check. He nodded, his face impassive. Understood, Mrs. Hayes. I'll run the diagnostics tonight after 2 a.m. The containment protocol was the other part of my security system, the part I knew nothing about. My smart fortress wasn't just about alarms and cameras, it was a vault. At my direction and at massive expense, I had commissioned a full security retrofit of the main living area, the grand, elegant, 12-foot archway that separated the main foyer from the sprawling living dining room, and the matching archway that led from the living room to the bedroom wing, were not just plaster and wood, they were reinforced steel frames, hiding a secret. With a single encrypted command from my secure smart home app, or from Mike's master panel in the building's security hub, 2 seamless 3-inch thick steel-plated security doors, perfectly flush-mounted and painted to match the walls, would slide silently, hydraulically out of their hidden wall pockets. In less than 3 seconds they would close, sealing the entire main living area, a 1,500 square foot space from the rest of the apartment, and from the outside world. SSSA. Thud. Once those magnetic locks engaged, you weren't getting out. Not with a key, not with a crowbar, not with a battering ram. The glass was all ballistic. It was a Class 3 containment unit, a panic room, a trap. The system is green, Mrs. Hayes, Mike reported back the next day. Hydraulics are fully charged, magnetic locks are functioning at 100%. The system is ready for your command. The legal trap was set. The physical trap was armed. All that was missing was the bait. A trap is useless if the rat doesn't enter. Amana was getting desperate, but she was also getting cautious. My refusal to sign the POA had made her suspicious. I needed to give her a new, irresistible, time-sensitive opportunity. I needed to present her with a target she couldn't possibly resist. So, I announced my vacation. David, Imani, I have wonderful news. I chirped over dinner one night, playing the part of the frail, slightly flustered but excited old woman. My old college roommate, Judith, has invited me on a cruise. A long one. 4 weeks. All through the Mediterranean. Can you imagine? I haven't been on a real vacation in, well, forever. I saw the look that passed between them. It was a flash of pure, unadulterated, triumphant greed. 4 weeks. An entire month with me gone. The frail old woman would be 5,000 miles away, unreachable, on a boat. It was the perfect, unmissable window of opportunity. Mom, that's wonderful, David said, his voice full of genuine relief. He'd be free from the tension and I'm sure the pleasure of not having to deal with me. Oh, Jen, you must go, Imani gushed, her eyes glittering with calculation. You deserve it. You've been so stressed. She was already planning her move. For the next 2 weeks I put on the performance of a lifetime. I became the frail, forgetful woman they wanted me to be. I'd misplace my reading glasses while they were on my head. I'd forget the name of the cruise line. I'd ask David to help me with my confusing travel documents. And then, I laid the bait. I accidentally left my spare set of apartment keys, the simple deadbolt keys, not the high-security fobs, in an obvious but hidden place. A small, antique teapot on the kitchen counter, the one Imani always commented on. I made sure she saw me hide them there, muttering to myself about not wanting to lose them. Just in case, you know, there's an emergency while I'm gone. I'd said to her with a confused little laugh. She'd patted my hand. Don't worry, Jen. We'll keep an eye on everything. I was practically handing her the invitation. The day before my departure, I had one last quiet chat with Mike, my head of security, in a discreet coffee shop far from my building. I'm leaving tomorrow, Mike, I said, sliding an envelope across the table. It contained a bonus and a one-page notarized letter. They are going to make a move while I'm gone. I am 100% certain it will likely be a forgery, a fake POA, maybe even a fake deed. They will try to take possession of the apartment. Mike nodded grimly. What are your standing orders, Mrs. Hayes? Let them, I said, my voice cold. Do not stop them, do not confront them. Your job is not to prevent the crime, it's to document it. When they show up, and it will likely be at an odd hour to minimize witnesses, I want you to call my secure line immediately, then follow my exact instructions. They will be specific. I handed him the letter. This letter grants you, as building security, temporary limited custodial authority over my unit in my absence. It also contains a copy of the real irrevocable trust document, confirming the true ownership. You will show this only to the police, after I have given the command. Understand? Understood, Mrs. Hayes, he said, his face impassive as he pocketed the envelope. Have a wonderful, relaxing cruise. Oh, I intend to, Mike, I said, standing up. I truly do. The trap was baited, the security was primed, the actress was heading on vacation. All they had to do was walk in. I was, in fact, relaxing. The first 10 days of the cruise were bliss. I was 5,000 miles away, in a stateroom the size of a small apartment, the dark, peaceful wine-dark waves of the Mediterranean sliding past my balcony. I had disconnected from everything. No email, no news, just books, history, and the blessed quiet. My secure satellite phone, the one I kept charged and ready in my nightstand, had been silent, until tonight. It buzzed. A harsh, insistent vibration that shattered the 3 a.m. stillness of my cabin. Not a text. A priority alert from my apartment's smart home system, routed through my secure line. Forced entry alarm. Triggered. Lobby access. My heart didn't panic. It went cold, clear, and steady. Showtime. A second later, as predicted, the phone rang, displaying Mike's secure encrypted number. I let it ring once, twice, then answered, my voice deliberately calm, as if he'd woken me from a deep sleep. Mike, what time is it? Is something wrong? Mrs. Hayes, his voice was low, professional, exactly as I'd drilled him. No panic, just facts. My apologies for the hour. As you predicted, we have a situation. It's 3:18 a.m. here. The building's main entrance alarm triggered, and then the alarm on your unit's front door. I have them on camera. It's your son, David, and your daughter-in-law, Imani. I sat up, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. I looked out at the dark, empty sea. Go on, Mike. They aren't alone, ma'am. They have a locksmith with them. A man I don't recognize from our approved vendor list. I've intercepted them in the lobby. Imani is, well, she's frantic and belligerent. She's claiming you had a severe medical emergency on the cruise. A stroke, she said. A stroke. How very creative of her. So much more dramatic than my forgetfulness. She's waving a document, Mike continued, his voice laced with the faint, dry disdain of a professional observing an amateur. It looks like a power of attorney, naming her and Mr. Hayes as joint agents, giving them full control of your assets and property. Frankly, it looks like a very bad forgery, Mrs. Hayes. The notary's stamp is questionable, but she's claiming it gives her the right to take possession of your apartment immediately, to secure it and your sensitive medical documents. She's claiming she's the new owner, I asked, clarifying. In essence, yes, that she has full legal authority. She's threatening to call the police on me if I don't give her access, claiming I'm illegally interfering with a medical emergency. The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking arrogance. They hadn't just come to snoop. They had come to move in, to seize the throne while they believed the queen was dying. 5,000 miles away. They were staging a 3 a.m. coup, using a forged document and a lie about my health as their weapons. I looked at my own reflection in the dark, glass balcony door. I was perfectly healthy, perfectly calm, and very, very far away. It was time to spring the trap. I took a slow, deep breath, my mind working with the cold, clear precision of a forensic accountant tracing a fraudulent transaction. The anger was there, a cold, hard knot in my stomach, but it was secondary to the tactical problem at hand. They had made their move, Now it was my turn. Thank you, Mike, I said, my voice quiet, calm. You've handled this perfectly. The performance is even better than I expected. Mom? He sounded genuinely confused. For the first time, the man was ex-military. He was trained to repel boarders, not invite them in. Let them in, but Mrs. Hayes, the document is a clear forgery, and they have a locksmith. They're attempting a criminal act. I know, Mike, I said, my voice soothing, firm, and we are going to let them. We're not just going to stop them, we're going to contain them. We're going to let them walk all the way into the center of the trap. I could almost hear him processing this, shifting from a defensive to an offensive posture. Understood, Mom. Your orders. Here is the plan, Mike. Exactly as follows. I instructed, my voice crisp and precise. You will go back to Imani and David. You will adopt a new tone. Apologetic, deferential. You are just a security guard and she is a powerful, frantic woman. You are convinced by her performance. Apologize profusely for the alarm. Tell her you're so sorry. You didn't understand the urgency of the medical situation. Got it, he said, his voice now holding a new grim understanding. Then, I continued, tell her that while you must, for legal liability, verify the paperwork with the building's legal team, which will frustratingly take a few hours, you will of course use your master key to override the alarm and let them into the apartment immediately given the emergency. You are to be as helpful and obsequious as possible. Make them believe they have successfully bullied you into submission. Yes, ma'am. Make sure they go all the way inside, I emphasized. Make sure David, my son, is with her, not lingering in the hallway. I want them both inside the main living area. Let them walk past the main foyer archway. Let them feel like they've won, like they're in control. And once they are both securely inside, past that archway and you are back in the hallway. I call you back, he finished, understanding the sequence. Exactly, I confirmed. Call me back the second they are both inside and the front door is closed behind them. Then, and only then, do you proceed with the rest of the plan. Understood, Mrs. Hayes, executing Operation Welcome Wagon now. He hung up. I stood up from my bed, walked to the minibar and poured myself a small, steadying glass of water. I walked out onto the balcony, the cool, salty Mediterranean air sharp against my face. I looked down at my secure smart home app on my phone. The screen was black, waiting. I navigated to the security tab, my thumb hovering over the bright red ominously labeled button containment. I waited. My heart was not pounding. It was beating with the slow, steady, powerful rhythm of a large, patient engine. The next 5 minutes, I knew, would be the longest of my life. The rat was approaching the cheese, and my hand was on the lever. The wait was indeed agonizing. 5 minutes stretched into an eternity. I stood on the balcony, the satellite phone clutched in my hand, my eyes fixed on the blank screen of my smart home app. Come on, David, be weak. Follow her in. Don't be the smart one, not now. Finally, at 3:24 a.m., the phone buzzed in my hand. Mike's secure number. I answered on the first half ring. Talk to me, Mike. They're in, Mrs. Hayes. Mike's voice was a low professional whisper. Both of them. They walked all the way past the main archway into the center of the living room. She's laughing. She's on her phone telling someone, we're in. It was almost too easy. He's just standing there, looking at your Picasso. My Picasso. Of course. My eyes narrowed. The one piece in my collection that was truly absurdly valuable. And you, Mike, where are you? I'm back in the hallway, ma'am. As ordered, the apartment front door is closed and locked behind them. They are contained. Good, I said, a cold, fierce satisfaction rising in my chest. Lock the main hallway fire doors on that floor. Alert the front desk that the 12th floor lobby is temporarily out of service. Then proceed with Protocol B. Call the police. Use the direct precinct line I gave you, not 911. Report a level 1 hostile breach and attempted illegal entry at my residence. Tell them the suspects are contained inside the unit. Tell them you have the real trust documents, the ones from Arthur, ready for their review. Understood, Mrs. Hayes. Executing Protocol B. Thank you, Mike, I said. I'll handle the rest. I hung up. I took a deep breath. I looked at my smart home app. I pulled up the live camera feed from the living room. A discreet, wide-angle lens hidden in a smoke detector, and there they were. Imani was indeed on her phone, laughing, triumphant. She had a small silver flask in her hand, and she took a long celebratory pull from it. David, my son, looked pale, guilty, and deeply uncomfortable, staring at the priceless Picasso on my wall as if it were an accusation. They're contained, and they have no idea. My thumb moved to the bright red icon on my app, the one labeled containment. I pressed it. Back in my penthouse, a sound they would never have heard before. A sound I had only ever heard during diagnostics would break the silence. A low hydraulic HSST. I watched on the camera feed. I saw Imani's triumphant expression freeze. What was that? David spun around, his eyes wide with panic. And then, the thud. A solid, heavy, utterly final sound, like a bank vault door closing. The seamless steel-plated 3-inch thick security door slid smoothly rapidly out of its hidden recess in the wall, sealing the grand archway to the foyer. A second thud echoed from the other side of the room as the identical door sealed the hallway to the bedrooms. I watched on the camera. Imani dropped her phone. It clattered, uselessly, onto the marble floor. David, his face a mask of pure animalistic terror, leaped to his feet and ran to the foyer archway. His hand slipped. He pounded on it, his fists making a dull, muffled, pathetic sound. Imani screamed, a high-pitched, furious shriek of disbelief and rage. What is this? What the hell is this? David. Open the door. But David couldn't. He was trapped. They were both trapped. Sealed perfectly inside my living room. My Class 3 containment unit. My panic room. My trap. Their panic was fascinating to watch, from a clinical forensic perspective. Imani, after her initial scream, went into a frenzy. She ran from one steel door to the other, pushing, pounding, her fists beating uselessly against the solid, unyielding metal. She tried to use her phone, likely to call the locksmith, the police, someone, but another feature of the containment protocol, one I had insisted upon, was the activation of a military-grade signal jammer within the sealed area. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, no way out. David, after his own initial panic, had slumped to the floor, his back against the steel door, his head in his hands, rocking back and forth. He looked broken, a weak man finally catastrophically confronted with the consequences of his own weakness. Imani, realizing the doors wouldn't budge and her phone was useless, turned her rage on him. I couldn't hear the audio, my cameras were video only, to avoid wiretapping legalities, but I could see her. She was screaming at him, her face contorted, pointing, accusing. He was just shaking his head. A pathetic, defeated gesture. They were trapped, sealed in a 1,500-square-foot luxury prison of their own making. I let them marinate in their terror for a full 5 minutes. I watched them circle the room, pushing on the ballistic glass windows, which of course didn't open, looking for any possible exit where there was none. I let the adrenaline, the fear, the accusations build to a fever pitch. Then, when Imani had finally collapsed onto my priceless silk sofa, her shoulders shaking with what looked like a mixture of rage and terror, I initiated Phase 3. I opened my smart home app again. I tapped a different icon, the one labeled, Commence Conference. Back in the penthouse, they would have been blinded as the lights in the room, which had been set to a dim ambient level, suddenly snapped onto their full, harsh, 100% brightness. An unforgiving, almost surgical glare. Click! Or! The massive 8K television on the wall, the one that looked like a piece of minimalist black art when turned off, flickered to life. It wasn't Netflix. It wasn't the news. It was me. My face, live streamed in crystal clear high definition from my stateroom 5,000 miles away. I was sitting in a comfortable chair, the dark rolling waves of the Mediterranean visible behind me. I noted with some satisfaction, wearing a rather nice silk pajama set. I had programmed the system to activate the hidden microphones in the living room ceiling as well, so now I could hear them, their frantic breathing. Imani's sharp indrawn gasp of pure unadulterated shock. I smiled. A polite, calm, almost gentle smile, and Good morning, Imani, David, I said, my voice filling the room, amplified by the high-fidelity surround sound speakers. Or I guess it's 3:29 a.m. there. My apologies, you look stressed. Having trouble with the doors? Imani and David just stared, frozen at my face on the massive screen. They looked like two primitive humans seeing fire for the first time. A mixture of terror, confusion and utter stupefied awe. Mom? David whispered, his voice a hoarse, broken croak. What is this? What's happening? It's a security feature, David, I replied, my voice calm, almost professorial. The containment protocol. I had it installed a few years ago, after the Alvarez case. You can't be too careful, you know. Amani found her voice, and it was pure undiluted venom. You did this. You trapped us. You bitch. You let us in here. Yes, I did. I agreed pleasantly. I'm so glad it worked. The system needed a real-world test, and you two, I smiled. You were the perfect willing subjects. Let us out, she shrieked, lunging towards the television as if she could somehow reach through it and strangle me. Let us out right now, you crazy old woman. Crazy? I raised an eyebrow. I'm not the one who showed up at a secure building at 3 a.m. with a forged legal document and a lie about a medical emergency. That seems not just crazy, Amani, but highly criminal. The word criminal landed heavily in the bright, silent room. David flinched. Let's review the situation, shall we? I said, leaning forward slightly as if starting a financial audit. 1. You, Amani, and you, David, as an accomplice have attempted to gain illegal access to my property using a fraudulent power of attorney. 2. You did so by lying to building security, claiming I had a stroke. A charming, thoughtful touch, Imani. Very creative. 3. You were attempting to, in your own words, take possession of an asset that does not and will never belong to you. Amani stared, her face pale, her mind clearly racing, looking for an angle, a way out. You? You can't prove any of that. It's our word against yours. We were worried about you. I laughed. A quiet, genuine, pitying laugh. Oh, Imani, my dear, you are such an amateur. Did you really think I, a forensic accountant, would build a trap like this without documenting the evidence? Let's see. Exhibit A, the high-definition time-stamped security footage from the lobby, showing you the locksmith and your forged document. Exhibit B, the audio recordings of your entire frantic and highly incriminating conversation with Mike, my head of security. Exhibit C, the multiple high-resolution cameras currently recording you from 4 different angles in this very room, capturing your panic, your confession of being in this entire delightful conversation. It's all being streamed live to a secure off-site server, managed by my lawyer, Arthur Fincher. Thank you for providing such clean, irrefutable evidence for the prosecution. David let out a low, strangled moan and slid down the wall, his head in his hands. He was done. Amani, however, still had some fight left. You can't do this, she snarled. You can't just keep us here. This is kidnapping. False imprisonment. Is it? I mused. Or is it a private citizen detaining 2 individuals who have just committed a felony, pending the arrival of the authorities? I'm quite sure Arthur will argue the latter, and he's very, very good at what he does. I leaned in closer to the camera, my smile vanishing, replaced by the cold, hard expression of a woman who has finally had enough. And let's talk about that forged POA, shall we? A very bold, very stupid move. Imani, because here is the real surprise. You see, I've been onto your little gaslighting campaign for months. Your misplaced keys, my forgotten bills. It was sloppy, predictable work. So 2 months ago I took a preemptive step. I met with Arthur. I legally, formally and irrevocably transferred this penthouse, and all its contents into the GH Irrevocable Trust. A trust that you have no access to, no authority over, no claim on. I don't even technically own this apartment anymore. The trust does, so that power of attorney you forged, even if it had been real, is utterly, completely, and laughably worthless. This was the part she hadn't seen coming. The legal checkmate, her entire scheme, the 3 a.m. takeover was based on an asset I didn't even possess. It was a fool's errand from the start. Amani just stared, her mouth open, the full catastrophic, humiliating scope of her failure finally crashing down on her. She hadn't just been caught, she had been played out, maneuvered, and utterly, totally humiliated by the frail, forgetful old woman she had so profoundly underestimated. I let the silence, the weight of her total, abject failure sit in the room for a long, satisfying moment. David was sobbing quietly. A broken man. Amani was just staring. A hollowed-out shell. So, I said, my voice calm, bringing the meeting to a close. Here is what happens next. The police, whom Mike called about, 10 minutes ago, are currently on their way up to the 12th floor. They have been alerted to a level 1 hostile breach and attempted illegal entry at my residence. They have also been informed that the suspects are contained, non-violently inside the unit. Mike is waiting patiently for them outside the steel door. He will provide them with a copy of the real trust documents proving my ownership, while the trust's ownership. He will show them the lobby footage of your fraudulent entry, and then, at his discretion, he will open the doors and allow the officers to come in and, shall we say, discuss the situation with you both. Amani let out a low wail. No, please. Genevieve, Mom, please don't. It'll ruin us. David's job, my license. Think of your son. My son? I said, my voice turning to ice. My son is the man who stood by, pale and sweating, while his wife, my daughter-in-law, attempted to commit a felony against his own mother using a lie about a stroke. My son made his choice. Now you both get to live with the consequences. I looked at them, two pathetic, trapped, desperate people, and I felt nothing. No pity, no remorse. Just the cold, clean satisfaction of a complex audit, finally perfectly balanced. The fraud had been identified, contained, and neutralized. Have a wonderful night, I said, raising my water glass in a mock toast. I'd advise you to sit quietly, perhaps on the sofa, it's very comfortable, and await the arrival of the authorities. I'm sure they will have questions. With that, I hit the end call button on my app. The massive 8K screen flickered, and my face vanished, plunging them back into their bright, silent, steel-plated prison to await the inevitable approaching sound of sirens and the heavy knock of the police. I stood up from my chair. I walked out onto my balcony. The first pale, golden-pink light of dawn was just beginning to touch the horizon over the Aegean Sea. It was beautiful. I opened my smart home app one last time and pulled up the camera feed. I watched as the flashing blue and red lights of the police cars arrived, illuminating the lobby. I watched as Mike, calm and professional, let them in. I watched as the officers, guns drawn, took up positions outside the sealed steel door ready to confront the hostile intruders. I had so neatly, so perfectly trapped inside. I closed the app. I put my phone down. I sat down in the comfortable lounge chair, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and sipped my water, watching the sun rise over the Mediterranean. As I always say, I murmured to the peaceful morning air, I always find the fraud. Thank you for watching.